Hi there, Ellwood City sports fans. My name is Brad Windhorst reporting for Ellwood City Sports. Today we're going to bring you coverage of the 2022-2023 sports alignments for Ellwood City. This is focusing just on Ellwood City and just their section. We will eventually talk more about playoffs and the entire classification closer to that time in the regular season, but we wanted to focus on the 2022-23 alignments, and in fact these alignments are actually for the next 2 years, so not only this year but next year, and there's a lot of things that have changed in sections that have kind of stayed the same for the past 4 or 5 years. There's a couple in there that have been revamped, and it's going to create some really good battles across the board. So we'll get right under the bat here. We're going to start with the fall sports, transition to the winter sports, and then the spring sports. But we have all the sports here at Ellwood City. Now, these are all the varsity recognized by WPIAL. We are not going to talk about the clubs and their sections just yet. There's a couple club sports out there, but we'll come back to those later on. So here we go. First off is cross country. Cross country on your screen. They're going to be playing in Division 2. Cross country is broken into different divisions and different classifications. So there's a lot of different movements there, but they're in Division 2, 1A, Section 1. And on your screen, we're going to have the teams, and if applicable, meaning that we have researched them and found last year's records through our systems. So on your screen, you'll see that Ellwood City is going to be competing against Beaver Falls, Freedom, Laurel, Mohawk, Neshannock, New Brighton, Riverside, Rochester, Shenango, and Union. That's primarily most of the Lawrence County teams in the area, and then the smaller schools from Beaver counties, with the exception of like Beaver Falls and Freedom. A lot of these teams cross-country competed against last year. There's a couple new sayers in there, and if you recall, Ellwood's cross-country team definitely was one of the featured groups, and they basically take those top qualifiers and whatnot, and the two teams that were truly represented very well for playoffs and the states, and that was Shenango in Ellwood City. Shenango was 9-1 last year, and of course Ellwood City was 10-0. In fact, you have to go back in the record books. The previous year they were 11-0, I believe. So you're talking 21 straight matches that Ellwood City has won now, and I bet it's more than 21 if you go back past that season. So the competition looks very similar. Not too much change here. But expect Ellwood City to battle once again. It is a new coach this year for cross country, being Nathan Brown, but you know that this team is going to come back once again this year. Moving on to one of the big ones in the fall, football. Okay, big talk about football. They're in the 2A once again, and Section 2. In the past couple years, the MAC, as we called it, or the Midwestern Athletic Conference, has been Section 1. It bumped over to Section 2, I believe, 2 or 3 years ago. But still, pretty much the same section. There is a little bit of change here, with the only team truly being new to the section being Western Beaver. Laurel does move out. They move back down to 1A. Laurel had a really good group last year with those 11 wins, unfortunately losing eventually to, I believe, Sarah Catholic, who was the 2A WPIAL title. The big thing here is there's a lot of teams coming back, and there's a lot of excitement. Wolverines have the new head coach, with that being head coach Dan Bradley. They're bringing a new system across the board. You're going to see new offense, new defense. A lot of that sophomore class, talent-wise, coming from middle school coming up. You're going to have a lot of youth playing on this team, and it's generating a lot of buzz. On top of it, let's be real, having a brand new field and a new stadium, not only with the track but the field as well, it's going to generate some neat views the next 2 years for sure with this alignment. If you look at the records, Beaver Falls 9-4. Yeah, they're going to be loaded, ready to go again this year. They have a lot of hopes to not only return to playoffs, but do a lot better than what they did with that 9-4 mark. Freedom was a team that really surprised a lot of members. Freedom did make some noise, even though they were 4-6. They did play fairly well on that end. I believe they did make the mark just high enough to make playoffs on their end. Mohawk, this was by far the most intriguing team, if you ask me, because that following team, Neshannock, at 7-4, one of those 4 losses for Neshannock was actually Mohawk, and I believe Mohawk traveled to Neshannock to defeat Neshannock. But yeah, that's a logjam there between Freedom, Mohawk, Neshannock, and don't count out New Brighton. New Brighton was 5-7 with their mark. They had 4 conference wins, I think, as well, if not 5, I believe. There's a logjam in this section, shall we say, of those 4 teams. Riverside was 1-8, and then rounding out the section will be Western Beaver. Western Beaver bumps up from their section and slides over. They're 7-4 last year. They're going to be loaded once again. I believe they are in their 3rd year with the new coach, I believe, and they're looking forward to coming back once again, reloading and making another run for playoffs. So if you look at this section, the front runner obviously is Beaver Falls, and I would lean on Neshannock as a solid 2. Then there's a logjam, and if you look in the bottom right corner of the screen, the top 5 teams qualify. Now, with there being 8 teams, there is 3 divisions in 2A. They're going to take the top 5 from 2 because they have 8 teams, and they're going to take the top 4 from the 3rd section or division that has only 7 teams. But with that being said, if there's 5 teams that make it, that means you basically have to beat out 3 teams. So if you're looking at the schedule for Ellwood City for the football team, that first 4 games, I'm going to split their schedule into halves. Their first 4 games are winnable, but more importantly, teams that were not as good quality last year. The back 5 is where there is a solid line of run of games in a row that are going to be very, very tough. The first 4 games for Ellwood, you've got Brentwood, who was 1-8, or only had 1 win. Then you follow that up with Union, who had 4 wins at the 1A level. Then you go to you have Carlinton, who had 1 win, and then Freedom in the section with 4 wins. So those first 4 games, the most wins that they're going to face against from last year was 4. After that, there's a run of Beaver Falls, Mohawk, New Brighton, and in Western Beaver. So there's a logjam, and then if you want to throw in Neshannock as well. So there's 5 games in a row, back-to-back, that are going to be a battle. And that is where this team for this year is going to determine whether or not they make the playoffs. First 4, if you go 2-2, or those non-section games don't mean as much, but the back 5, you're going to have to beat a team like New Brighton, Freedom, Mohawk, or Riverside as the 10th game, the final game of the season. If you win those 4 games, you're solid going to be in the playoffs. You can slide by with 3 wins, and I wouldn't doubt you're going to have the 5th team here in this section with only 3 wins, but you're going to have a tiebreaker. You're going to have head-to-head concerns, and you don't want that. So in hindsight, basically, you want to beat the teams that are on the lower end. You got to beat Freedom, Mohawk, New Brighton, and Riverside. If you beat those 4 teams, you're solidly in as one of the 5 teams that will qualify for playoffs. So we'll have to see. It's going to be a brutal schedule on the back end, but hey, I mean, you got to line them up. You got to line up, and you got to play, and that's how it is. So there's the section for football. Next up, we have golf. Golf hasn't changed too much on this end. They're playing in 2A Section 5, and we will be reporting their results on Friday. That being said, that is literally tomorrow.
They are going to have like 4 or 5 matches before the school even starts, the school year wise. But yeah, so we'll have that coverage. They're playing Union 9 o'clock at Delmar on Friday, so we'll have that. If you're looking at the section, the top 2 teams do qualify. Last year, Ellwood did qualify, beating out Riverside with, I believe, the head-to-head at that point. Ellwood and Neshannock did qualify, and they both battled each other. And in fact, after the full 18 holes, Ellwood and Neshannock were tied. Unfortunately, the tiebreaker was a sudden death one-hole playoff match, and unfortunately Neshannock did win. We'll be a little bit biased on that. It was on Neshannock's home court, or in this case their home course, so we'll give them a little bit of edge, but nonetheless, another great season by Ellwood. They were 8-5. They finished technically second in the section. Another good year. They're going to have to be battling Laurel, Mohawk, Neshannock, Riverside, Shenango, and Union. All those teams all year long are very solid and teams that compete very well. And a lot of those courses, if you go to these courses on a regular basis, or let alone these matches, they're not tough, or they're not easy. They're very tough matches, and you need to be on your A game not only 1 week but every match. These teams have 2 or 3 matches, and each one over that 13 match schedule in conference and whatnot, everyone is meaningful. So expect Ellwood to do well once again. They're going to have some youth step up. They're filling holes, especially with the seniors that graduate. So they're going to have to make some youth moves there. But top 2 teams qualify for playoffs. Up next in the fall sports is soccer, and that is co-ed, and that is a co-sponsor, I believe, with Shenango once again. This section has really been rough the past couple of years because it's been dictated by one team. And if you look on the right side, that is Quaker Valley. I don't want to say that this section is set up for one team, but it is. Quaker Valley for sure is going to win this section again. It's going to be by a landslide. Quaker Valley has always had a good, solid soccer program. They've got a great field down there and a good program and a solid coaching system down there for the past several years. Expect Quaker Valley to come out on top. After that, it's kind of Avonworth and Riverside as a battle who's going to be second and third. And then the back end, there's a lot of teams that haven't had really good success the past couple of years are going to be battling for that 4th seed as the top 4 teams qualify. Beaver, Hopewell, Mohawk, and Riverside. Riverside was 9-11, so expect them to be up there once again. But there's a chance here that Ellwood has some teams that they can compete against. It sounds weird, but Ellwood could compete against the likes of Beaver and Hopewell, and Ellwood can easily upset Mohawk. I know a couple years back it was within 1 goal, and it was a very close match. All it takes is one upset, and you get on a run, maybe win 2 games or 3 games, and you could easily qualify as one of the top 4 teams. So there is soccer in 2A Section 4. The next sport in fall, and that is girls tennis. Girls tennis is 2A Section 4, and yeah, folks, if you look at this section, wow. To say the least, Beaver County 101, and it is rough sledding. In fact, Ellwood City and Neshannock are the only 2 teams representing pretty much from Lawrence County. After that, everything is going to be a travel down to Beaver County, and those Beaver County teams are solid. This section involves Beaver, a team that Ellwood has not played well with. Beaver's on a whole different level. Beaver Falls is that one team, as well as Riverside, that Ellwood can compete with. The other ones, it's going to be tough. You got Blackhawk, Central Valley, Neshannock, and Swickley Academy. All those teams made playoffs last year, including Beaver. All those teams were solid, and that is going to be a battle. So expect Ellwood, not say that they're going to struggle, but they're going to have to be on their A game. They're going to have to compete, and not just each match, but this is going to be dependent based upon those doubles. The 3 singles for competition, and then they play 2 double teams for the 5 match points, and you have to win 3 out of the 5. It's going to be a battle every match, every actual match between players and athletes. It's going to be a tough one for the girls' tennis team. Finally, the last sport in fall sports, that is girls volleyball. And girls volleyball has had some really good success the past couple of years. They made it to the Whippeal Championship game against North Catholic a couple of years ago. They had a great team, solid team last year. Unfortunately, lost to, and it's going to be a thorn in the back of us for the next couple of years, Avonworth. They lost to an Avonworth team that was very solid, and they made a good run. They lost last year in 4 sets, 3-1 to Avonworth. But once again, Ellwood proving really good, solid team. Making some moves there, knowing that they did not finish in the top 2, let alone the top 3. They were the 4th team from the volleyball end to qualify, but they still made really good marks there, and expect them to be up there once again. Now, the one thing that is intriguing about this, it does take the top 4 teams to qualify. I know Laurel's losing a little bit of strength there. Neshannock is losing a little bit of strength, and Shenango. All 3 had senior-led teams, but expect them to reload, and expect that first 2 or 3 matches. That's going to determine, we're going to see real fast what kind of team they're going to be. Are they ready to go and reloaded, or are they going to struggle a little bit and come in to play in the playoffs later on? But Laurel's good, Shenango's good, Neshannock's up there, and then the one that we're going to talk about, obviously, that moved actually down from 3A is Beaver. Beaver is a solid group, and that's going to be another battle. And if you look at those 4 teams, Beaver, Neshannock, Laurel, and Shenango, 15-1, 14-3, 16-4, 11-5. That means Ellwood being 11-7. There are 5 teams here at the top from last year's group that are going to compete for 4 teams. But don't rule out Mohawk. Mohawk was 5-13, but they did compete very well. Beaver Falls is always a good battle. They always find a way to compete. And then Riverside is starting their program back up once again. So that is a brand new squad there. Expect them to be trying to compete each week. But very heavy between Beaver, Mohawk, Shenango, Beaver, Neshannock, Shenango, and Laurel. There's going to be teams that Ellwood's going to have to compete to get back to playoffs once again. So there's your fall sports. We're going to slide to the winter sports now. The winter sports, we're going to start with boys basketball, and they have changed just the slightest bit. They're in 3A Section 1. That part hasn't changed. The only change that occurred here is that New Brighton basically slides in. New Brighton was at the 2A level. They're going to slide up to the 3A level. And this is your typical section that we've seen in the past. Beaver Falls, Mohawk, Neshannock, New Brighton, Riverside, as well as that little trip down to Freedom. This is a good section for the boys to compete. And not only compete, they're going to battle, and they're going to have a really good chance to actually win this section outright. Top 4 teams qualify, and I'm not putting a lock on anything today, with it being literally August the 11th, but expect the boys to be very competitive, definitely make playoffs in my books, unless something big happens schedule-wise. This group looks good, and I tell you what, they're going to compete. Beaver Falls is going to be really solid this year. Neshannock is losing a couple players, but again, they're going to reload. The dark horse teams that I'm looking at here, Riverside has been solid basketball in the past, about 10 years ago on. The past couple of years, they've suffered a little bit. They haven't been as strong, so I'm hoping that slides back. Riverside should compete once again, but the Mohawk team had a good squad, a competitive squad. That 6-16 record doesn't tell you the full story there, but a good group here nonetheless. So expect Ellwood to do great things once again. On the flip side, for the girls basketball team, 3A Section 1, not much change other than, the big heavy hitters sliding out. We don't have to worry about North Catholic. There's a couple teams here and there that slide out. But you slide out North Catholic, and who do you replace them with? The legendary Neshannock Lancers. Neshannock does move up from 2A, so it's going to make the competition very tough once again as a front runner. With Neshannock sliding up, Neshannock's going to be the favorite to win the section. After that, there's about 3 teams that are going to be vying for those 4 spots: Ellwood, Laurel, and Mohawk. Beaver Falls and Riverside are programs that are struggling the past couple years. They've got youth and they've got talent there. They're just one step behind. And in a section that only has 6 teams and top 4 teams qualify, I will say that on paper, this is probably the most, I don't want to say predictable, but the pretty much set section that the 4 teams that are going to make it. It just comes down to where did they finish. But I'm not going to roll out anything, obviously, because like I said, it's August 11th, but Ellwood once again at that 10-12 record. And I don't want to harp on last year, but they just missed playoffs by 1 game. They got beat out by Mohawk. Mohawk was 5-7. Ellwood was 4-8. And that 1 game at Mohawk was a 1-point loss. And it was a last-second bucket. If that bucket doesn't occur, Ellwood wins. They would have been 5-7. They would have been the 4th team to qualify. That stings a little bit, but it's also good development for this year. You know the section now. You know what teams are supposed to be good. Expect Neshannock to come right out of the gate, but that's your bar. That's your level. You know Neshannock's going to be high. You got to play to their level. So there is girls basketball. Moving on. We're going to talk about swimming real quickly. We want to talk about swimming with the success that they've had the past couple years. The big thing here is it is a co-sponsorship with Riverside, so they are listed as Riverside, but obviously we're going to have a couple of the athletes from Ellwood competing there and whatnot. So that section is very similar to last year. Beaver Falls, Central Valley, and Hopewell, Quaker Valley, Riverside, and an intriguing 2A Section 2 team in West Allegheny. So we'll keep up to date. I know Riverside has kind of helped us out with the past couple of seasons, getting us some information from them and filling us in. So we expect, once again, Riverside to be up there 2 years in a row, making playoffs and competing well, and I believe being 2nd and 3rd the past couple years in Whippeals or states. Some good quality swimming there between Riverside and Ellwood. The last sport for winter sports is wrestling. Wrestling is now 2A Section 5. The top 3 teams qualify. There's some newcomers in here, specifically Hampton and Highlands. Some new teams in there. Knock is fairly recently new. But Ellwood's going to have to compete here. And the teams that are coming in are very solid, especially Highlands at 14-2. They slide down from the 3A down into the 2A section, but you got Ellwood in there at 3-9 from last year. Expect them to be more competitive this year. Hampton, Highlands, and Knock, those are all competitive teams. You can't forget what Laurel has done. Laurel's wrestling program has been darn good the past couple of years, and in fact they have a couple athletes there that have gone into college rankings. I know there's a couple that went to Penn State region, stuff like that for Laurel. North Catholic and some academy programs that are not necessarily known for wrestling and not focused on it, but again, expect to be a battle for Section 5 here in wrestling. The top 3 teams qualify as team qualifiers, but expect Ellwood to have 1 or 2 athletes individually to qualify as well. So there is the winter sports. The last section here being spring sports. We're going to start off with baseball. Baseball is going to be really intriguing this year. If you have not heard, check out the Ellwood City Baseball Boosters program on Facebook. They're going to need your support. Yes, they are making a trip down to Florida, and they're going to be playing, I believe, at the ESPN Sports Complex down there. It's going to be a neat trip. They're going to have fun down there as some preseason games and some games that may count to their record in that. So expect them to have some fun down there. When they come back, I tell you what, it's going to be tough sledding. You got a couple new teams up from 2A, and that includes Neshannock and Shenango and Riverside. 3 teams that all not only made playoffs, but were darn good record teams, as you see on your screen. The other one that slides down from 4A is Quaker Valley. They're not as a more competitive team, again, with baseball, but a 9-10 record in 4A, that tells you that they're going to be competitive. I believe Quaker Valley was in the section with Newcastle as well, so expect there to be some good balance there with these Beaver County teams between Quaker Valley and, of course, obviously Riverside. Top 4 teams qualify. And if you look at the records, not only do you have Neshannock, Shenango, and Riverside, on the other side, and don't forget Quaker Valley, but on the other side, from our section last year, you have Mohawk. Yes, Mohawk's going to lose a couple seniors and whatnot as well, a couple pitchers that they'll have to replace, but they're not going to be pushover either. This section, I want to say, is probably on this list the second toughest, with girls tennis being the toughest. Girls tennis has always been tough the past 5 or 6 years, and if you ever talk to Coach DeBuono, if they could pull one upset, whether it be Central Valley or Beaver or the academies, they're lucky, and it's tough sledding. But baseball is going to be very competitive. Pitching is going to be very key this year. It's going to be a battle, and we'll have to see. Obviously, the 4 teams that are favored this year obviously will be Riverside, Shenango, and Neshannock, and probably a split between Quaker Valley and Mohawk. Ellwood's going to have to pull some upsets here to get into those top 4 teams to qualify for playoffs. Moving on, softball's up next, and this may be, on the flip side, one of the easier sections for Ellwood City. Not saying that this section is weaker than the others, just saying that, well, you can look at this on paper and you can tell which teams are going to stand out right off the bat. And I believe we can go on the record saying that Ellwood is probably the favorite of this group to win the section. They've got some great youth there. They've got some experience. They got a couple juniors and seniors that they're going to lean on with that playoff experience the past couple years. Coach Rosansky has this group once again looking really, really good. Yes, you've got Central Valley and a good, solid Mohawk team. Hopewell's not a pushover either. Those are fairly new teams. Quaker Valley is back in the section once again, and Beaver Falls as well. So I would say the top 4 teams have to qualify. The teams that are kind of looking on the outside in would be Beaver Falls and Quaker Valley. So once again, you kind of have an idea what 4 teams should make playoffs. It's just who's going to be the first or the second seed and so forth. I want to put some a bank on that Ellwood City may have 1 or 2 games at the end of the season that may easily determine who finishes first in the section. Next up is boys tennis. Boys tennis is in 2A Section 4. The top 3 teams qualify for tennis. There are a total of 7 teams. This is another section that is just like girls tennis, very, very tough. I will go on the record saying that the girls tennis sections have been a lot tougher than the boys the past couple of years. But you can see on your screen, this is not a pushover either. A bunch of Beaver County teams. In fact, all of them are Beaver County teams except for, well, of course, Ellwood City. That's to be expected. Ellwood being so close to Beaver County border and the section area, but it is what it is. You got to compete. Ellwood City finished 4-4 last year. A really good, solid result. They did pull up a couple upsets last year. And they did compete very well. They had to play like the teams like Neshannock, and they competed very, very well. This year, though, they're going to have Beaver, Blackhawk, Central Valley, Riverside's not a pushover, and on top of it, oh yeah, by the way, Sewickley Academy. So there's a lot of teams there, and only the top 3 teams qualify. Ellwood is going to have to play lights-out tennis the entire season, just for hopes to be qualifying for playoffs. It's going to be tough. But, hey, that's, once again, like any sport, you got to line up and you got to play. All right, finally, our last sport that we're going to talk about on the 2022-2023 alignments for Ellwood this year, and that is track and field. Track and field being co-ed. They'll be competing both boys and girls in 2A Section 1. This group is looking to battle back and be stronger than ever. Once again, Nathan Brown, the cross-country coach, will be also coaching track and field. I know his coaching staff has been coaching as a group together, so they expect some good things here. It's going to be intriguing to see how Ellwood does. This one is primarily focused on Lawrence County. I kind of like when they do the non-contact sports to be county-based. Like your tennis per se would be nice if it was Lawrence County. Your track and field, cross country. I like when those groups are Lawrence County based, because they basically say we want the best team in your county, and that's what we get here. Riverside and Shenango were the top two teams last year in track and field that competed very, very well. Shenango has always shown and proven that they have not only a good cross-country team, they're really good at track and field. Ellwood's going to have to battle in this one. You've got Laurel in there. You've got Neshannock in there as well. Union's not a pushover. So, once again, the Lawrence County teams here, including, obviously, Beaver Falls, it's going to be a really neat track and field competition across the board. So, folks, there you go. There you have it. That was the sports alignments for Ellwood City this upcoming year. We're going to be starting here fairly shortly. Like I said, Friday is golf. The following week, we'll have girls tennis starting up, and within 2 weeks from now, we will be sitting in a booth, in a press box, talking about football and eventually slide into the gym for girls volleyball. So once again, folks, my name is Brad Windhorse. You can catch all the action this year on our website, www.ecwolverines.com. If you need some navigation tools on how to navigate our site, you can watch the previous video. It's on our blog as well, the W Zone. It will tell you exactly where to go. I know people were asking, what's the easiest way to get to your live streams? Instead of navigating left and right, if you go to our website, in the top right corner, the only thing that is not blue, white, and black color scheme for the school, that will be a red button that says YouTube. If you click on that, if we are live, when you click on that button, it'll take you to our YouTube page. You'll see a live video feed. You can click on it, make it full screen, and you can watch our live stream. So, once again, folks, reporting live for Ellwood City Sports. My name is Brad Windhorse. Hope to see you in the next upcoming weeks in the stands, around the courses and whatnot. And, hey, have a day, let's have some fun, and let's get the 2022-2023 school year and, more importantly, the sports season underway.